Thank you so much. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land I am coming to you from is the unceded territory of the Sayelks Okanagan peoples. That's what we refer to here in British Columbia and in Canada generally as a land acknowledgement, and it is part of our reconciliation and reparation process that the government is undertaking with our Indigenous communities. So I'm pleased to be able to share that piece with you. And it's just for context, the way that we start all gatherings here in the province, whether it's a government level gathering or even just a gathering at work. So I think my next step here, Nalini, if I'm not mistaken, is just to get a sense from all of the breakout facilitators about what you guys had an opportunity to discuss and to get a distillation of that.
Correct.
So can maybe I start with my own wonderful facilitator, Natalie?
Oh, bless your heart. Hi, everyone. Very excited. We had great conversation in our room, and of the two questions, I think we had an opportunity to really touch on both. I will just start with something I always say, which is knowledge does not equal understanding. And we talked about, first and foremost, the work that you do. And sometimes we're fortunate enough to work in spaces where we have knowledge. And someone in our group actually worked in an area where part of their job was really being an advocate for health, navigating the health system for individuals who had disabilities, and which would include people, Black and brown people with disabilities as well. And it's very interesting that now, having done that for so long, there's a new perspective that I actually can use this superpower that I have, not just only in the regular work context, but beyond, because I have knowledge that I can use to help other people. And we can all relate to the fact that there is a lot of anxiety when you talk about going to a doctor or dealing with a condition that you don't know about. We often don't tell the doctor the truth. I don't know why we're trying to protect the doctor, but there are also, and our opening speaker touched on some of our cultural biases, which have us figure that we need to endure more pain or we need to use home remedies. And so we cut off our experience with the doctor. We never really get into the benefits of the healthcare system, but just think about the power of being able to help someone. And we've seen this in many spaces where people out of their personal experiences tackle and really get to the nuts and bolts of a problem, and they solve it. Too many people run away from the problem solving because it's overwhelming. And so if you have a superpower like that and you can use it outside of your job, that is something that you can do today to help someone tomorrow. We also had someone in our group who had an interesting lens to share through children, and the fact that their children are actually in the healthcare field now because of a very healthy early exposure through after-school high school program that gave them the opportunity to see the state of healthcare for minorities. And so they entered the field with a passion, right? The way you enter your occupation makes a difference versus entering with passion versus entering because being a doctor means you make more money. You can be rich. And so you have one group of professionals who are very passionate and very empathetic and will go the extra mile to ask the right questions, make you comfortable, work in the neighborhoods that need the help, but perhaps cannot pay, versus others that are more clinical. They're very bright, but their focus and privilege is to be successful. And so that creates that imbalance of scales with what we encounter when we work with or go into a health related situation. It's so important now that we do encourage those who are passionate about helping others to go into healthcare for that reason. Finally, we had a perspective of privilege where individuals have observed and been just really floored by people either being so insensitive in this day and age, even if they're in the most diverse setting, they lack the sensitivity. And again, that may be because they came into the situation or group for a different reason, just out of circumstance. They didn't choose to be a part of a diverse group, so they're very insensitive, not sensitive. And you being a part of this group are afraid to rock the status quo, or you're actually in a situation where you witness someone pulling that privilege card. And you mean the only thing you can come up with is, oh my God, they're not doing that. That is crazy. I can't believe I'm witnessing that, but that does happen. So I will stop it there, but you can see that there's so many layers that trickle down and affect the health experience. And so the healthcare you seek and your lens and view in terms of what and how important healthcare is for you. I would just close that, I shared that I heard your zip code actually now determines more of your healthcare disparity than your genetics, because so many people live in healthcare deserts, and we, totally be amazed to understand how bad it is at this point in time. Thank you, Joelle.
Thank you so much. That was a great conversation. Can we maybe move to, I know Melanie, you told me I could use first names, but I feel like I have to say Mrs. Faley.
I am very glad that I have that title and I can be anyone I want to be and part of this group. I went into the conversation totally without an opinion at all, and I learned so much from the people in the group. The first is the difficulty of finding doctors who will take care of Medicaid patients, disabled patients, and when the advocate is not a family advocate, but an advocate who is there for the patients. And in that when economics plays a role, it's very difficult, and Medicaid cuts, it's very difficult. And the situation becomes more difficult when it's, sometimes a person of color. But that population is one that's not served, let me say, with joy and care and understanding and the passion that a doctor should have for going into the field, wanting to help others. And then there was the idea of doctors who you want to find someone who has either a similar cultural background or a background where they're at least sympathetic to what your culture is and where you've come from. And I personally believe that that's certainly possible, but it certainly takes a really long process to find the best people to serve you. And that if someone is an immigrant coming into our country, in many cases, they don't even know where to go, which led to a point that was made about a person in a restaurant who was serving people who had hepatitis and wasn't going to the doctor because didn't know where to go, how to get services. And so what's the effect? Well, many people in that restaurant could become ill. And we have to see that point when we look at public health. And I think that's a really valuable point to make, is that, public health is for everyone because it's going to protect everybody. You might have the money to pay, but if you're served by someone who doesn't and they don't get good health care, then they may, cause you to have something and you wouldn't even know. Very interesting point about COVID testing and COVID and the vaccine. And the trials are beginning. I know they are beginning. I have a son who's in the pharmaceutical industry, and the trials are beginning. And Jerome made the point that the trials should be composed of a huge, diverse group, and maybe the trials should be based on the people in the group should be selected by the groups that had the greatest deaths. So their reward is we choose them to be to agree or disagree to be part of the trial. I mean, that's a choice that someone makes to be in the clinical trials. They have to have them, but that there should be diversity in that. And for a number of reasons, that if we know, and there should be public knowledge about the groups, you have all this knowledge about who's dying and so forth, but the makeup of the clinical trials should be known to the public. But I thought that was a brilliant idea. And then it kind of, really does come down to the whole idea of economics and public health, and the knowledge that, public health and healthy living should be possible for everybody. Healthy food in communities should be accessible. I know that there are gardens that have fresh produce, that they take the produce to communities where they need good fresh food. And I think it ended in this very good idea, which was brought up, that being healthy is a luxury. And no, it's not a luxury. Having healthy food and being healthy is a necessity for everyone to be to be able to function with a lot of energy. So there's big room for education, a big connection between economics and medical practice. But I think if a lot of people understood how they can be affected by everyone else and what they can do to affect change, it would be, create a really good, strong sense of community. So wonderful information from my group. Thank you for educating me.
Thank you so much for that. Let's move next to Fran.
He's not here, so I actually had his group.
Sorry, I didn't write that down. My bad.
That's okay.
Do you want to go next?
Sure. I tried to fill Dr. Clifton's very large shoes, so I'll share. So in my group, we had some very interesting conversations, largely around the discrepancy between expectations and the actual experience of engaging with someone in the healthcare industry. So the expectations being on both sides, the expectations of patients feeling that, my doctor has a number of degrees. So therefore, with those degrees should come an obvious understanding of who I am, or a movement past my perceived identity, or an embracing of a dialogue with me, asking questions rather than making assumptions and zeroing in on what the presumptions are, and that eventually lead towards not the greatest, smartest healthcare decisions. And then the expectations on the other side of medical professionals towards the patients of being able to roll with the punches of the lack of bedside manner, being able to roll with the manner in which communication is actually delivered. And healthcare professionals, whom we often look to as being icons of health and healing, not exactly wearing that necessarily along with their white coats. So it was a very interesting conversation around expectations and experience. Something else that we spoke about, which Natalie and Mrs. Faley also mentioned, have to do with being healthcare advocates and how critical it is for us ourselves, or for us to find amongst our community, whether that happens to be family or friends, to actually step in and lean on people who are not dismayed, or people who are not fearful of, or not so jaded by the healthcare system, or by past experiences or childhood experiences with medical professionals, to actually step in and serve as healthcare advocates who can be assertive. And in doing so, perhaps there's an opportunity for some compassion. Perhaps there's an opportunity to see things as ignorance rather than as mean-spirited racism, and perhaps to find ways to encourage compassion in another way. And that is this: that unfortunately, when we look at illnesses, whether the illness happens to be a high blood pressure or diabetes, when the patient happens to be perhaps darker looking like myself, or something like that, the idea is, well, you created this because it was your lifestyle choices, or it was your genetics, or this is the backstory to this, and there's an immediate jump to that backstory. However, when we're talking about something such as opioid addiction, and we're talking about someone who looks exactly the opposite of me, there is a sense of immediate compassion, like what must have driven this person to indulge in this, as opposed to, how dare you eat fried chicken, versus, oh no, we feel so sorry for you that you have now become a victim of the opioid crisis. And that there are backstories, and one has a label of you did this to yourself, and the other one comes with a sense of, this is not your fault, this is the system around you. I thought that was very interesting. And in that, there's a systemic dehumanization that takes place. So I thought what was really interesting, and Nicole, if I can give your maternal grandmother some credit here in her share, Nicole shared that her wisdom was to be open-hearted, be open-minded, be open spiritually, and that there really is a space for us to approach such encounters with compassion. And at the same time, if you see something, say something, speak up. And our hope is that with the rise of attention and focus on such issues of diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging in recent weeks and months, that perhaps the cost of speaking up will diminish, and hopefully has already started to diminish, so that people can feel more comfortable speaking up and speaking out when there is an experience of some kind of injustice, however big, however small, that there is less of a cost, so that we can all feel comfortable speaking up in the same manner that Natalie said, like, hey, there's something wrong here, or, are you sure you want to be approaching this in that way? And sometimes it takes just a little bit of privilege or a little bit of assertiveness to step into that. It was a great conversation, and I really enjoyed my group. So thank you, Joelle.
That sounds great. So I think we have Shaw next. Does that seem right? Yep.
Yes. Hi, guys. So we also had a great conversation in our group as well. And we noticed some people had experienced, as far as seeing cultural competence and racism, and other people, they hadn't. So some have experienced this firsthand, other people have just noticed it. And one thing that we agreed upon is that it's really important to have a wide network of people. This way, first of all, it enhances your knowledge, and it helps you learn different things. And one person shared their family member, what they went through. They had a handicapped family member who were African American, and they noticed that when they were at the medical facility, that the level of care just wasn't up to par. especially when the family members weren't there. And even when they were there, they noticed that things such as, asking to take a look at the patient's chart, or just accountability of the patient aides that help the patient, they noticed those things as far as the competency, it just wasn't there. So it made them think, this is when they have their family there. How about people who don't have their family members there? Imagine what they go through. And it makes people think that whether we are deserving of this, that good level of care. It makes people question these things when they see this in the actual settings. So that's something that definitely we have to work on, the medical profession, uh, and we hope that we can do better in that. And then we had other people that actually went to certain areas. For example, we had somebody who went to South LA on a teaching rotation, and what they noted was that there were no grocery stores. It was really more of fast food restaurants and unhealthy choices. So some communities, they don't have the basic necessities, and so there are certain issues that are even deeper than just the medical facility or just people's health being bad. There are deeper issues that we need to look at, and one is access to healthy environments, like some of the other people mentioned. And then we had a perspective of teacher, and what they mentioned was that they noticed that in their classrooms, African American students, they were a little bit more timid, and they didn't participate, and the teacher had a tough time trying to get those students to participate. And that's a tough job for teachers as well. There's only so much that they can do. I think as a community as well, we can do better in that. Some of us that do want to help, maybe we can go to these communities, give seminars where young people can talk to younger kids and tell them the importance of participation. So tying all those things together, I feel that the first thing is awareness, being aware of these issues, um, having exposure to these things for both adults and our children. And then as far as our children go, giving them the confidence, teaching them how to be confident, teaching them participation, how important that is. We were so lucky, going to the school, some of us that we went to, that our teachers taught us that. Some of our teachers we're still friends with, and we realized those teachers had a big impact in our lives because they taught us those things. So we have to make sure that we find ways to help others feel more comfortable. And this goes for all minorities, and also making sure that we are informed and we teach other adults and children to be informed as well. And hopefully that goes a long way. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for that. Have I missed any facilitators, or are we
You're good.
good? Okay.